Child Welfare Virtual Expo 2017. Session title, Resolve and Recommitment, a Call for Candor.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed the interactive chat sessions, and we're glad you've stayed with us until the end of our day today. As a reminder, if you can see us but you can't hear us, please turn up your speakers on your computer, and if you need additional assistance, the help desk is available, as always. I want to welcome you to our closing session for the day. I'm Mary Garrison, the Center for State's Deputy Director. I've been working in child welfare for more than 30 years, and I understand the kind of commitment it took for you to be here with us today. But I also believe it is critically important for the child welfare field to invest in opportunities like this to increase knowledge, skills, and peer sharing around this work. I'm pleased to introduce Naomi Haines Griffith, who's going to challenge us today and inspire us as we leave here. Naomi's a well-known storyteller and family systems specialist with 30 years of experience working with children and families. She worked in North Carolina and Alabama child welfare systems and became executive director of the PACT, a pioneering child welfare prevention agency that she helped to found. She also served on the state board of the Alabama Department of Human Resources. Naomi is a former board member of the Alabama Children's Trust Fund and has worked as a consultant to and trainer for Prevent Child Abuse America. She currently serves as the president of Red Clay and Vinegar, an LLP. So please join me in welcoming a fellow Southerner, and I just found out a fellow Tennessean, Naomi Haines Griffith.
Behind her is the Child Welfare Virtual Expo 2017 logo and the Twitter handle, #CWVE.
Mary, thank you for not reading that long bio, because every time I hear my own biography, I think whoever that is as old as dirt or she can't keep a job. I mean, one of the two. So thank you for not doing that. Now, for all of you out there, I'm a Southerner. I know that comes as a surprise to some of you, but I am a true Southerner. I grew up in Alabama and Mississippi. This is who I didn't even know I had an accent until I worked in Montreal. And I was all rigged up for the International Conference on Child Abuse and Neglect, and they were trying to decide if I needed two interpreters. I needed one from Southern to English and one English to French there in Quebec. And so finally they gave me two. They covered all the bases. So this is a little warm-up time, if you're not used to this accent, for you to get your ears ready to hear it. And one little suggestion is that we don't have any one-syllable words. We can take any word, like, pen, and we turn it into two syllables. And we can just make it last a long time like that. And that's because it's so hot down there. We cannot get in a hurry. So this is this little time for your ears to get all tuned up to this particular type of deep Southern accent. I want to ask you a question. I want you to really think about it. We're going on a journey together. And you have been on a journey. But I often think and ask an audience, I'll say, how'd you come to be here? Who are you? How did you get into child welfare? I know you didn't wake up when you were 20 years old and say, I want to be in child welfare. That is not the way things happen. There are very few people who start out here. This is part of a journey often for people. They start other places and then they get into child welfare. There's something very absolutely, it's so appealing to me. It was, just tell you, I'm gonna tell you my story. Now, when you tell your own stuff, it's like pulling your clothes off in public. It may not be pretty, and you may not respect me when it's over, but I am going to tell you how I got into child welfare. I went out to teach when I was about 20. I'd gotten out of college in a hurry, had no money, went day and night. I graduated and I went out to teach. I was a 20-year-old teacher in high school. Now that should be against the law in any state. It should be a Class A felony to turn somebody 20 years old loose on 150 kids a day, because you don't know enough to get to the car, much less be gomming around on people's lives. But I'm out there, and I'm teaching English. And by then I'm starting to realize that English is truly my second language, But anyway, I'm out there teaching it at that age, just feeling my way along. And then I went from Decatur High School in Decatur, Alabama to a school in Nashville, Tennessee, where I was one of 800 new teachers that fall. Now, the old beat-up teachers, the ones on tenure, they had all the good jobs. So when I walked in, it's like fresh meat, you know. We've got the place for you. And they put me in this tough, hard Center City school where most of the kids I had already been adjudicated delinquent. And there I am. And there are little things in your life that change you. And one day that fall, I'm standing in front of a class of 28 or 30 students. And all of a sudden I thought, every student here has brought his family to school. There are 28 families in this room. And I just can't see them. And these families are going to determine what happens here. They're going to determine my success. Every one of these children has brought his family system to school. And I remember just being struck by that. And then this second thought was one of those moments, those epiphanies. I thought, and this is the one I would, if I had a Sharpie and I could write something on your arm with a Sharpie that would never come off, it would be this. Every child grows up thinking the world is like his own family. Every child grows up thinking the world is like his own family. If it's a place that you're respected, if it's a place where you are treated with dignity, and what I've come to see, there is a rhythm of life, so you know what to expect, then that's what you think the world is. But if it's a place there's chaos, unpredictability, you never know how things are. You don't even know if they're going to be there when you get home from school that day. That's what you think the world is like. And that's why this work has been such a challenge. And that we're dealing always with a reality based only on our reality. And we are constantly trying to change that, adjust that, make that different. And I remember standing there thinking, you don't know a thing about families. Because the only family you know about is your own. And you don't know about your own till you're about 40. And when you get to be about 40, you realize that uncle that you thought was in the Peace Corps, he's really in Leavenworth, Kansas in prison. He will be there forever, but nobody's told you that, right? When you get to be about 40, you start picking up on that stuff. Up until then, you think you've been living on a little house on the prairie or maybe on Walton's Mountain. And then you start finding out about your family. It's true. And I stood there thinking, the only family I really know anything about is my own. And I thought to myself, if I'm ever going to be any good, if I'm ever going to make a difference, I've got to learn about families. I've got to find out more about families. Well, it was during Vietnam, and my husband was sent to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, biggest post in the world. And I thought, this is the time. This is the time. So what I decided to do, I decided I'd become a social worker. I didn't know what one was. I had read about it in a book, but I loved how it sounded. Social worker, fun at work. I mean, it was very clear to me. Social worker, fun at work. I am a party girl. I love a good time. And I didn't know it was social worker. I thought it was social worker. You know what I mean? Big time, good time. And I thought, that's for me. I'm getting on that train. I'm there. And so we got up to Fort Bragg, and I got a little card and mailed it into the state to take the social worker 1 test. And I went up on the appointed day. Everybody there looked just like we all look. I went in this little room with about 50 people, and I took the social worker 1 test. I made 92.2. And I turned into one right on the spot. It was a miracle. Went in a teacher, came out a social worker. Took 1 hour and 15 minutes, that's all it took. And I could feel the fire come down from heaven. I could feel the wisdom coming on my shoulders. I could feel, all of a sudden I think, oh my gosh, I've got the answers to the mysteries of life. I am, oh my goodness, I'm a social worker. And the next thought I had was, there are families all over Carolina sitting on the porch waiting for me to show up to tell them how to raise their children. I have been hit with wisdom. There's fire. Don't you know about fire? I mean, where you're just so full of it, I can hardly wait to get out of that room and get down there where I'm going because I've got the truth in my heart. I've got the truth in my heart. And I have that feeling inside of me that I can hardly wait to get there. And I drive that 46 miles back down to Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I go to work for the Cumberland County Department of Public Welfare. That's what they called it back then. Can't do that anymore. Don't do that anymore. We have all kinds of names now. Department of Social Services, Department of Family and Children's Service. Every state does it differently. But back then, it was the Department of Public Welfare. And I walked in that building, walked in my supervisor's office, I can hardly wait to get there because I had that fire. Do you remember that fire? That fire where you just feel like there's something that's so great and wonderful and big that you just got to get started. And I knew that I was in my place. And my supervisor, who was from Virginia Beach actually, was there. And she said, Naomi, I'm so glad you're here. I said, yeah, I can't wait. I'm ready to go. I said, I'm just so excited. And she reached over and got the child welfare manual. It was a big black notebook about this big and about this thick. And on the front, it said Volume 1. That is not a good sign, I'm telling you. And so she handed me that manual, and she said this, so help me. She said, read this and you'll be ready. And I said, you know it, girl. I'm all over it. I mean, I'm here. I'm ready to go. You know it. I'm your person. I'm your person. Give me that book. And she gave me that book. And I'm telling you this because all of us have been there. The next most exciting thing was they gave me an office. I'd never had an office. I was so excited, An office with a door and a desk and a phone. I thought, oh my goodness, I have a position. I am somebody. I mean, I've got an office. Well, the first thing I did is I reached over and got a sheet of 8 by 10 paper. And I folded it like this. And I wrote Naomi Haines Griffith on it and set it up on my desk. I made me a nameplate right off the bat, right there, set that right up there. The second thing I did is I called my mama, Collect. I called her down in Alabama and I said, listen, Mama, your baby's got a position. I was so excited. And I opened the child welfare manual. And I started reading things. I read a chapter on adoptions. I read a chapter on foster care. I read a chapter on child abuse and neglect and general dependency. And I realized that I didn't know anything about any of that. See, that hadn't been on the test. I didn't know anything about that. But I didn't tell anybody. Do you remember when you get involved in something really big, something really important, and you know that you don't know, and you just have to play like for a while? It takes about 3 years to get your feet on the ground. But I don't tell anybody that I don't understand that. And so when my supervisor would walk down the hall, I'd sit up and look real smart, open my eyes big, act like I was really with it, But I knew I'd stepped off in deep water. On the 4th day, look at me, 4th day, my supervisor came in and said, Naomi, I think you're ready. I said, you know it. I'm all over it. Just tell me what you want me to do. I mean, I'm your person. I am ready to go. She said, today you make your first home visit. I said, I can do it. No doubt about it. I mean, I'm here. I'm ready. The world has been deprived of my wisdom for 4 days. I've been sitting here 4 days waiting to put it into action. My goodness. I said, talk to me. Tell me what you want me to do. She said, I want you to go out here on Bragg Boulevard and find the home of Emma Washington. And your job is to tell her that her check is going to be cut off. She's been on public assistance for 26 years. Now, I am so stupid that I do not have a clue what that means. By this time, I am 26 years old. And when you are 26, you fall in one of two categories. You're either dumb and you know it, or you are dumb and you don't know it. And there is nowhere else to get. And if you can't face that and we can't face that, we're not being candid and truthful. I am serious. One category or the other, and you can see where I was, all right? I said, well, I can do it. And she walked out of the office, and I began to think, what that all means, I didn't even know what that meant. But let me tell you why I was so excited. I thought, hallelujah, I'm going to the field. I had no idea what the field was. But all those old social workers would get up in the morning and they'd go to the field. And wherever they were going, I wanted to go. Because they would leave and come back and they'd have coffee and a donut. I mean, come on. And I think, I'm all over that. I'm ready to go to the field. You know what I mean. Come on, come on. I said, hallelujah, I'm going to the field. And so I get in my little car that I had back then and I start out down Bragg Boulevard, which is the 4-lane between Fayetteville and Fort Bragg. And if you've been around Army bases, you know that those roads are covered up in everything you could possibly think of. And I'm riding down through there, looking to the right and looking to the left, I'm seeing signs like I have never seen in my life. I mean, there were signs for go-go dancing, pole dancing, lap dancing. I saw signs that I did not even understand. But I have been to Vegas now, and I know what that is. And if it says anything about wrestling, don't stop. Don't stop. And so I am going out through there, my eyes, this little old Southern woman, doesn't know jack. Finally, I find the home of Emma Washington. She is living in a garage apartment behind this go-go place. And I pull my little car right up to next to those steps. But let me show you something. Let me reach in here. Before I got out of that car, I reached over and got the most important thing in a social worker's life, which is her legal pad. This is the sign of our authority and power. I had figured out that because all those old social workers had one of these. Now, I'd never had one, but I knew it was important. And when you start out, you got it naked like this, plunged like this. And then after you've been there 10 years, they give you this cover. That's how you know you're tenured workers, okay? And so I took that legal pad. I mean, you talk about power. This is what makes little children run and cry when they see one of these. And they say, it's the caseworker, it's the caseworker. That's how they know. And I knew you had to have one to be really a professional. And so I had slipped around there to the supply room and I got me one. And let me tell y'all something, seriously, if you're gonna carry this, you gotta know how to hold it. It goes right here over your left breast, right here, just right here. It sits right here, look at that, doesn't that look powerful? And let me tell you, there's a little groove that it sits in right here. And that little groove, you set this in that little groove, and then you pull yourself up over it. And it makes you feel like you know what you don't know, okay? But let me tell you something. You'll know when it's time to retire. Because when you reach for that groove, it's gone. And that's the time for you to go home. Go to the house. When the groove goes, we need to go. But I picked up that legal pad. I got it all positioned. I went up those steps and I knocked on that door. Go with me. I knocked on that door. The door opened. It's a woman in her 40s. And I said, Ms. Washington, I am Naomi Griffith from the Cumberland County Department of Public Welfare. And she said, honey, come on in. And I stepped into that little front room of that apartment, and there was a little sofa sitting over there. And I want to tell y'all the truth. I didn't let my bottom touch that sofa good. I mean, I hardly got sat down until I turned around and I said, Miss Washington, your check is going to be cut off. None of that building rapport, none of that creating a relationship where you have to go back and get an MSW, learn how to do that, you know, where you sit down and you learn how to have a little small talk and you get to know them and then you tell them why you're there. But I didn't know any of those things. I didn't have what they call finesse. And I said, Ms. Washington, your check is going to be cut off. It's over, girl. It's finished. And when I said that, she jumped out in the middle of the floor, right in front of me, and she said, you can't take my check. I can't work. I've had surgery. And she took that dress and she threw it up over her head, right in front of me, no underwear, naked, right in front of my face. I heard this sound go, ooh, that was me. Ooh, ooh. She was the first naked woman I'd ever seen in my whole living life. I'd never seen anybody but myself. And you can't see yourself good, you know that. And so, I mean, women don't do naked. I can travel with 3 women in a room for a conference for a week and never see anybody naked. We change our whole outfit under a t-shirt. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. You know, and you put your t-shirt on, you change your clothes, then you take your t-shirt. Everybody knows that. We don't do naked. I'd never seen such a sight. And let me ask you another question. Where do you look? I mean, it's right in front of my face. Where do you look? I could feel my heart pounding. You know, I could feel my face was red. I'm thinking, what in the world? What am I going to do? I can't get a word out. I can't get a word out. And so finally, I did the only honorable thing. I reached down and got my purse. And I went and got in the car. I didn't say goodbye, kiss my foot, or nothing. I mean, I got in that car and I headed to the house. I mean, I headed to the office as fast as I could go. And I went in there where my supervisor was. I said, June Davis, I'm going to tell you right now, if that's what social work is, I'm out of here. I can't look at that every day of my life. and that is the day, that is how I'm being so honest with you. That's how I started. I just jumped right off into families that day. I jumped off into families. Dumb as a rock. Dumb as a rock. And I have never known a person who entered child welfare who did not enter the same way. Nothing, this is a discreet, special place. It is different. And I jumped off into families. And the next years of my life became the best years of working with families. And I'm standing here and I'm telling you the truth. I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of families. And I've learned a lot. But I still don't understand all families. I never will. All families are different. Each one is totally special. Each one is different. It has a different history. It has a different set of experiences. It has its own integrity. And what I came to see was each family has its own personality. There's no way that I could ever say that I understand families, but I understand them so much better over the years of and let me just be really candid here. We are going to be candid in this discussion. It was an honor. It was a privilege to cross that porch. Every time I crossed that porch and walked in that door and sat down with that family and we talked about things that really mattered in life, very few people ever get to do that. There are very few people that are given that privilege to go up those steps and cross that porch and sit down and talk about stuff that really matters with a family. I would sit there with them and I would say, I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I'd say, tell me what you want to see happen. Tell me what you want to see happen. And I'll help you get there the very best way I can. Talk to me. And they would pour out their dreams and their fears. It was a privilege to sit on that sofa. I learned so much and came to value the family system so much. And I worked with so many families who had been so marginalized, who were so far outside the mainstream, many times without any fault of their own. And I would say, talk to me. And they would talk about just basics, basic things that I could maybe help them to navigate, to move them closer to the center. Things that most people might just take for granted. But it was an honor. And I came to see that child welfare is a calling. It is a calling. To be afforded that privilege, to enter into a family system and affect change, enable change, encourage change, and build on the strengths of a family. You sit there and you talk and you get to know, and then you start to feel what their strengths might be, as tiny as they are, that you can build on. I've come to see through this day-to-day, listening to these panels, as we have talked about capacity building, I began to think about child welfare and the fact that we need to recognize that we have capacities. What are our strengths? We talk about it all the time in families. We talk about helping them find their strengths and build on them. Why don't we apply that same pattern to our own profession? Because this profession is so special. And what can we identify about child welfare that would be our capacities? And I sat there today and listened to the panel, and I began to think that I knew several things about us as child welfare, that if I were sitting with somebody and they said, tell me what your strengths are, what would I say? I would say the first strength I would say is that we are constant. We are constant. We've been around in most states over 60 years. We have never backed up. We have done a good job. We are constant. And I thought about that, the fact that things change and come and go, but not child welfare. We stand fast. We have a history. We go back to the mid-1950s, where child welfare bureaus were established all over this country. And we have built on that. We have a history. And the next word that came to me is that we have standing. We have standing. I mean, we stand for something. And I got to thinking about it. There's no other system but us that is in every county, in every state, in this country for children. We're it. I can dial up the phone in Montana or Alaska or Hawaii, and if I want to know something about what's going on about children, that's the number I'm calling, because they'll be there. Our first capacity is that we are constant and we have standing. The second one I thought about as I sat here today is this. We have a vast amount of knowledge. I don't think you can find it anywhere else. We know a lot. Let's just be candid with each other. We know a lot. We have a reservoir of knowledge and skills about families that is second to none. That's our strength that we build on. Do we know it all? No, we don't know it all. We're learning every day. We learn today. But we're willing to learn. But we have this knowledge, and we have a skill set that is absolutely special, because child welfare is a unique experience. It is a unique system. There's nothing else like it. third thing I thought about is that we are resilient. Come on, y'all. We are resilient. Over these last 60 years, we have absolutely had to back up, go forward. We've had to rise up like the phoenix out of the ashes. We have had to overcome tremendous obstacles, and every time we have stepped up. My mind went back to the 1970s when the federal regulations required all states to write child abuse legislation, and my state did that, Alabama, where we set up central registries. Y'all all know our history. Where we trained the mandatory reporters, where we trained the permissive reporters, where we did all this publicity. We defined child abuse and neglect for the whole community. Up until then, we did very few investigations because it was not a recognized, identifiable, high-profile problem. We were mostly a foster care, adoption. Once in a while, I would have a report, but it was usually neglect based on economic circumstances. But once we did that, it was like an explosion. We went from very few reports to hundreds of reports in 1 year. It was absolutely the biggest challenge I had. I was a child welfare supervisor by then, and it was the biggest challenge I ever faced. We had to take all of our resources and we had to reallocate them into investigations. It was the most unusual experience of my life. But you know what? We stepped right up. You know, the responsibility was given to us, and I'm being candid, we were not prepared for that. We didn't have the knowledge. We really didn't. We didn't have the technique. We really didn't. But we got busy. It took us a while to catch up. But we were given the responsibility, and we were resilient, and we came roaring back again. And then over a period of 2 or 3 years, we found a lot of answers. We never backed down. The other one I think of in respect to resiliency, I'd been in it a long time by then, and I really thought in the late 80s and early 90s that we almost had child abuse licked. We got to a point where it was the number one social concern in this country, identified. And I could see all kinds of indications that we were about to maybe get over the hump. And then the drug thing came along. All the drug problems raised their ugly heads. And again, we were fighting again to catch up, to adjust our approach, to understand families with drug problems, to look at what the whole situation in a different, we had to step up again, and we did. So when I say resiliency, that is a key to me of what makes child welfare unique. The next one, strength that I would identify, is adaptability. I'm telling you right now, we can get with it. Let me just say, we're tough as nails. We've been there, we've been through a lot, and we can adapt. And when I say adapt, I'm saying we're willing to try new things. We're willing to change. Often bureaucratic institutions are not willing to do that. But we will try. And we will be open to new ideas. We will try to adapt because we believe in our mission. Maybe that's the biggest secret to it all. But before I talk about that, let me just say the other one I thought of, and that was the fact, this is the other strength. We're very creative. You know, given an opportunity, we can come up with the best ideas. And we're encouraged. I always felt encouraged to do that. Did I know it all? Did they always work? No. But we're creative and we're innovative. About, 5 or 6 years ago, I went out to Vail, Colorado to speak to the big conference on differential response. And they'd brought in people from all over the country and all over the world. And I sat there and heard them talk about what they were trying to do differently in their states as a response to reports of child abuse and neglect. I was so impressed. Every state looked at it differently. They named it all kind of different things. They packaged it and all that. Some of it worked better than others. But I was so impressed with child welfare willing to step up with that degree of creativity, innovation, and with that much courage. And I keep up with it. I've worked in several places with their differential response leadership. And I realize that things, some work, some don't. But you never know till you try. And we're willing to try. Now, the last one is the one I'm really keyed up about, is that we got to have, and we do have, a passion for this work. I think when you get deep into child welfare, you start thinking like that. I don't care what job I have inside this head, I am a child welfare worker. I'll always be one. And what I have come to see, it is a way that you look at the world. It is an attitude. It is a mindset. And it is very special. And what we draw from this is a passion, because we cannot fail. This job is too important. We have to be willing to step up. So I go back and I think about those capacities that we have. Do we have problems? We're just talking. Of course we have problems. Do we have obstacles? But all day long I've listened to creative ways that we're trying to deal with those obstacles. Some outstanding things are going on that will help us change and shape a different future that can meet the needs of children even better. Will they all work? No. Do we have all the answers? No. But as I listen to us talk about building collaborations, doing cross-system work, bringing people along, making what I call significant alliances outside our department, outside of child welfare, we have made tremendous strides. And it really is one of the main reasons to me that child welfare is such a unique experience, is that we have strengths to build on. And we will. After I had been in child welfare about 2 weeks, I think it was about 2 weeks, my supervisor came in and said, "Naomi, you're going to be on call this weekend." I said, "On what?" This is the truth. I said, "On what did you say?" And she said, "You're on call." And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "Well, starting Friday at 5 o'clock until Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're it for us." And I thought, oh, Lord, don't know. I didn't know what that meant. It terrified me. I was scared to death. I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, if there's a call, you're it. You take care of it." And she turned around and walked out of the office. Well, Friday came, and my heart is up here. And I'm thinking, what is this? What am I going to do? Well, I made it through Friday night, made it through Saturday. I'm coasting, you know. Y'all all know what I'm talking about. Every child welfare worker knows what that means. I'm coasting. I get to Saturday night. I get to Sunday night. I think I've just about got it. I'm just about over the hump. 10 o'clock on Sunday night, the phone rings. And it's the sheriff's department. And the deputy says, "Naomi, I think there are 2 little girls out here in Hope Mills, North Carolina. They're 5 and 7. And I believe they've been there 3 days by themselves." And he ended up with the sentence that I've heard hundreds of times in my years. He said, "You need to do something. You got to do something." And I hung up that phone. I got in my car. It was February, y'all. It was so cold that you could just blow smoke. It was like an icicle. I got in my car and I drove dark, 13 miles to Hope Mills, North Carolina. Hope Mills was a little mill village where the mill had collapsed and shut down, but there were little mill houses there where the workers had been that ran along a railroad track. And I drove down there, down that little dirt road, not a light in sight. My heart pounded. I got up to that house. I had a little pin light keychain. And I got out of that car. I still remember it. And I inched around the back. And I got over to that house. There were these high steps up there. And I shined that little pin light up there. First step missing. Second step, half gone. I am so scared. And I am so alone. I got around, I pulled myself up to that second step, went up the remaining 4 or 5 steps, got up on the porch, little old mill house, tiny, falling down. And I remember walking over to the door and knocking on the door. And you could hear that sound reverberate forever in that stillness, that cold, that dark. And finally the door opened about this far. And there were 2 little heads, one on top of the other, looking out. And I said, I'm Naomi Griffith. I've come to, as we say in the South, I've come to see about you. I've come to see about you. And she swung the door open, the older one did. And I stepped into that little house. It was colder in there than it was outside. There was a little old, what is called a laundry heater in that front room. And those little girls had been burning their clothes and burning their schoolwork to try to stay warm. It was so cold in there. And I stepped into there and they started backing up. I know if you've done child welfare, you know, they just back up. They just back up. And I stepped into there. And I'm being, again, candid. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? I walked across that front room. They're traveling around behind me, dragging behind me back here. I did what I did so many times. You go look at the kitchen. I don't know why social workers always have to go look at the kitchen. You know, we have to look in the refrigerator. I never even knew what I was looking for when I was looking in the refrigerator. But we always looked in the refrigerator. And I think it's like a doctor with a stethoscope. I mean, it's no good. He just does that while he's trying to think what's wrong with you. I mean, it's just something to do. And so I'm going through that house. And I get back to the kitchen, and I go to that old fridge. And they're right here behind me. I can feel them. They're not touching me, but they're right behind me. And I open the door to that refrigerator. The only thing in there is a half of a cabbage that is frozen and stuck to the back. And I just stopped. And you're trying to think now, what am I going to do? And so I closed the fridge. I turned around, and those 2 little girls, they're 5 and 7, they just rushed for me. And if you've had children, you've seen them do this. They just wrapped their arms around my legs. They just reached out and wrapped their arms around my legs. And the older one said, I knew you'd come. I knew you'd come. And doesn't that just say it all? Doesn't that just say it all about child welfare? That we have been stepping up for all these years. And there are people who are waiting. I knew you'd come. It is a noble calling. It is a unique experience. It is something special. And we are treading and walking where very few people ever do. I am very proud of that. And as I turned to walk out of that house, I could feel my whole reality changing, because that has set the tone for the rest of my career. I knew you'd come. And we have. We have come. And we will be there. We have been, and we will continue to be there. It's a fact, because we have a passion.
Mary Garrison speaks.
Thank you, Naomi. I know you'll all join me in appreciating Naomi for her story and for inspiring us, making us remember what it was like to be in those early days of our work, making us remember the stories that touched our hearts and that live within us forever, something that we have the privilege to carry forever. So thank you. This brings us to the close of the Child Welfare Virtual Expo for 2017. We've had a full and exciting day. I want to encourage you all to take the time to reflect and process what you've learned today, but don't put it away on the shelf for tomorrow. This virtual expo was strategically designed for you to be able to share, absorb, and put into practice new ideas in an ongoing way. We had 800 active participants, including people who were participating in groups. We're very excited about that. That's more numbers than we had last year, and we hope to see that continue to grow in the future. We encourage you to be active participants in learning and in the change process. We hope that you will try out new approaches that you've learned about during the expo, and also continue the conversation about what you've learned with your colleagues. We also ask that you share your experiences and takeaways on social media networks as part of the learning community, and we'll be sending you more information on this after the event, so stay tuned. This is a critical time in child welfare, and we wanted to host an event that was responsive to the current state of child welfare field. There's an acute need across the country to improve child welfare outcomes related to safety, permanency, and well-being, as you well know. Current and pressing concerns, including reversing trends that are resulting in more children and youth coming into care and not returning home, or finding adequate permanency options and difficult family situations created by the expanding opioid crisis. Despite the challenges, as we've learned throughout the day, there's a lot of excitement and innovative work being done to address the needs of children and families. We're all learning, adapting, as Naomi pointed out, it's one of our strengths, and making evidence-informed changes to be responsive to the problems, but we have more work to do. One thing we have learned and we're integrating into our work is the value of collective impact. That's to say, it's going to take all of us to give these ideas and innovations force. The commitment of child welfare professionals at every level and across the child welfare continuum is required in order to achieve those improved outcomes. We looked at several themes today to help us focus our work moving forward towards quality assessment and decision-making in order to achieve those outcomes. We believe this work will be central to our responses to today's most pressing child welfare matters. Through the presentations, discussion groups, and sessions featured today, we learned that good assessment supports good decision-making, and that good assessment involves collecting and using available information effectively and working collaboratively with families and partner organizations. We looked at the power of quality, timely data to get a better view of what's happening with families and how their needs may be changing so that we act on the real story. We reviewed how child welfare collaboration with substance abuse, domestic violence, and mental health partners can improve comprehensive assessments and service delivery. We also looked more broadly at comprehensive family assessment and the importance of parent engagement. We heard Arande speak about that in the very first session, which requires showing compassion and encouraging hope, listening to understand, and being okay with sometimes being uncomfortable in the interaction. We were asked to recognize and respond to the impact of trauma. You heard Donna Pence this morning speaking to that, on children, youth, and parents that come in contact with child welfare and provide support and services in ways that help them to heal. We explored opportunities to use protective capacities and protective factors in a strengths-based approach to enhance assessment and decision-making and to prevent repeat maltreatment. We discussed that assessment is not just about the initial safety and risk assessment, but rather about ongoing assessments over the course of the case at each visit and each decision point. We owe that to our families and children. Finally, we were all reminded that while the best practice approaches and strategies discussed today are important, it's the passion, and you heard this referenced in our last closing speaker more than ever before, that you bring to your jobs that turns potential into action and that will make the real difference in the lives of children, youth, and families. We know that most of you did not join child welfare because you thought it would be an easy job. Some of you joined because you thought, I don't know, teaching might not be for me. Maybe I want to go join with some families. You joined this field because you care about children and families and you want to see people thrive. You're here with us today because you're passionate about your work. You understand that the children and families that become a part of your agency's caseloads need your full attention to make informed decisions and help guide families to the best services available that will serve their complex needs. And we know you depend on support networks and resources to help you make quality assessments and decisions. We believe you're key to supporting families and working closely with them to help them get back on track when something in their circumstances has set them off course, and we want to help you in that endeavor. The Virtual Expo provided an opportunity for, and we saw the enthusiastic exchange of information and ideas today. We saw lots of activity in the chat rooms, in between sessions, during sessions. We saw lots of activities in the booth around people discussing and exchanging information. Our desire is that you will take that information, tools, and strategies from today and apply them into your ongoing work moving forward. We know that's not an easy task. We know that your lives are filled with the business of doing child welfare, and we hope that you find the opportunity to share more information with colleagues that you met today. Being able to effectively respond to the complex issues you face in your everyday work requires finding ways to share information, enhance peer-to-peer collaboration, and being open and available to learn from each other. I hope you took some time today and will continue to take time to share your stories and expertise with your peers, as you heard the folks doing from the stage today. Presentations throughout the day in the exhibit hall highlighted a number of innovations and strategies, from creating timelines with clients to predictive analytics to strength-based assessment. We hope that agencies will be able to adapt some of these approaches to help overcome challenges. You and your colleagues will have ongoing access to the Expo's presentations and featured resources. Publications and tools mentioned during the sessions and in the exhibit hall are currently available in the platform's resource center. If you haven't downloaded some of those to your briefcase, you can still earn some badges. And all of the recorded sessions from the full Virtual Expo will be made available in the coming weeks through the center's website. I hope that as you reflect on the day, you found the presentations, chances to share ideas, and opportunities to work together valuable. I want to take a moment in this closing to recognize the staff from the Center and the Children's Bureau who worked hard to gather speakers, develop sessions, and organize through opportunities through this platform in order to get you the best resources and information possible. I also want to thank our fantastic speakers and our engaging speakers for sharing their stories, their strategies, their insights, and their commitment to the work with children, youth, and families. And last but certainly not least, thank you all for joining us today and setting aside time to engage, learn, and share about strengthening assessment and decision-making for improved outcomes. Before you log off today, we really ask that you will take a moment to complete our online evaluation form. Your feedback is critical in how we keep improving this modality and our outreach to you. We feel like it's absolutely necessary in furthering our work to support you and your agencies. Finally, thank you for your good work that you do every day in the lives of children, youth, and families, and we hope to see you soon. Goodbye.